Got the neck bolted on and glued for a super solid joint. It's not going to go anywhere. It's going to be stable and offer us a great sustaining tone. So I told you that the first most critical important step to assembling your Boxter is getting the neck on tight, solid, straight, and accurate. We've done that. The second most important thing is where this goes. This is the bridge. The bridge placement determines three very, very important critical things that can make or break your instrument's ability to play in tune and play well. The first thing is the intonation, and that is the ability to play in tune at each fret position. And the bridge moving up and down, back and forth, changes the intonation. So I'm going to show you the easiest and quickest way to properly place the bridge so that you've got perfect intonation. The second thing is how the strings align along the edges of the fingerboard. Left to right, this can affect this greatly. Now there are 4 indented places that the manufacturer, MGB, provides you for approximate placement of the bridge. Consider these more of a suggestion than a finite thing, because this bridge location depends on where you drilled and installed your neck. And even though this is an accurate position, if this was installed perfectly, you really don't have any way of knowing that yourself. So left and right handles the strings. And the third thing is the action above the strings, above the fret, the strings. So what you want to do is, after you've set your neck and glued it and everything's dried real well, what you want to do is try and check the level of your fingerboard against the height of your bridge. And what you really want, we'll place this where the suggestion is on this, but if you'll notice, I'm hitting the bridge, okay? So I'm not hitting the frets, I'm hitting the bridge. So if the strings were on this instrument right now, they would have to be raised up on the bridge side quite high to get an accurate or acceptable playing level. So thankfully, MGB includes this little spacer. It's 1/8 of an inch, and this will be placed underneath the bridge as we mount it to the top, and then this will give us exactly what we need in terms of the height. So you always want to take a straight level and check your string path to make sure that you've got the right clearance at the bridge, because that's the most important thing. And then, once you've got the clearance and the intonation and the side-to-side set and your bridge is drilled and mounted, you've got a perfectly playable instrument. And then we'll get on to the electronics and the rest of the assembly. To properly place your bridge for mounting, what you want to do is take 2 strings out of your MGB guitar string pack that's provided with the kit, and go ahead and thread them through the bridge, run them up through the nut, and put them onto each outside tuner there. So we've got the 2 outer strings on. Then that way you can adjust the bridge laterally this way to make sure that the spacing between the string and the edge of the fingerboard is identical on both sides, which it is right here. I've used a small C-clamp to kind of just keep the down pressure onto the bridge here so that I can locate and make my measurements and mark what I need to do. So now that I've got the string spacing equidistant on both sides, what I'm really going to be interested in now is the lateral or intonation phase of this. Intonation just means that the guitar can play with itself in tune at any fret position. So at the 12th fret, if a guitar is properly intonated, the open note will be the same as the fretted note. And you can check this using a digital tuner. And these saddles are adjusted so they do go up and back to adjust fine-tune increments. What you've really got to do is get the bridge in a broad, correct place. As you can see, we've got fretted, harmonic, and open. So once I know that's in place, I can take a pencil. Now, I'm not going to try and mark the center punch of each hole right now because of all the string dimension. What I'm really going to do is make 2 lines just real lightly on the front edge of this, and then one on either side, and then one along the black back plane as well. And that'll show me where the bridge is to be placed, and then I can carefully mark each hole center line to the hole that's on the bridge plate so that we can get it mounted accurately. So now that I'm pretty well convinced that this is in the right position, I'm going to go ahead and take the strings off, remove the C-clamp, sand a little bit under there to get the string basically flat with the surface there, and then I'm going to glue it right on, screw it right on. So the next thing we got to do before we mount the bridge is there's got to be a ground wire, just a bare wire that connects the metal part of this bridge to the internal electronic components here. And this is the wire that's provided right here in the pre-wired, pre-soldered harness, okay? But what I'm going to do, and this is probably a little trick that most of you guys may want to try or may not, but it just helps in terms of ease of assembly here. So I'm going to take this really long ground wire, which honestly is 3 times as long as it needs to be. And I'm just going to cut it in half. And then the reason I'm doing this is because I'm going to go ahead and pre-install this ground wire so that it's making contact with the bridge, and it's hanging out inside the cavity here so that I can just strip and connect it together when I put the electronics in. Remember that 1/8 inch drill bit that I told you you'd need? Well, this is why. Put it into your drill. We're going to start it about right here. Now I've got these 2 screws in right here to hold the plate into position so that the holes will line up once it's drilled. And once we're through the plate, then we're going to angle it back. And that's it. Now we've got clear access into the cavity here. So what we want to do is when we install the bridge is we will just fish this ground wire through the hole. We'll feed it all the way through so that the stripped wire portion is exposed so that when this rests on top of that, it's making contact with it. And that's how you mount your bridge. And once we do that, there's the other end of our ground wire right there. So the prefabricated wiring harness includes 1 pickup, which the mounting slot for the wiring access is already there, 1 tone and 1 volume, and an output jack. So it's pretty simple. But I actually ordered an additional pickup for this. And what we're going to do is mount this in the bridge area right here. And then that way we'll have a dual pickup guitar. So I'm going to need to add a small switch as well, a selector switch, and I'll show you how to do that. But basically what I need to do is mark and drill the location for the wiring access for this pickup right here. Alright, so what I'm going to do, and this is a very easy way to do this if you don't have a router table and a router, find a drill bit that fits the hole. Okay? And we're going to just draw 2 lines, extend this down this way. We're going to figure out how far away from the edge of the pickup, from the edge of the bridge, the pickup needs to be placed. And then we'll drill 2 holes on either end of the slot, and then just take a file and basically rough in between and cut a slot by hand just as accurately and nice as this with no router. So let me show you how to do that. So I'm just going to run a straight line all the way down the edge here to identify one end of the slot. And then here's your second edge right here. There. So this is where our slot's going to be for installing this. Now, if you'll notice, the pickup has wires that come out on one end, on this end right here. So the slot's actually going to be positioned closer. See where that wire comes out? That's where I'm going to mark it, right there. So there's our mark. And there's where our slot will be. So all we have to do now is just drill a hole on this end right here, and then on this end right here. Once those two holes are drilled, then we'll be able to connect them together and make an open slot for the wire to pass through. There's one. And there's two. So now all I got to do is just connect these together. So you just feed the end of the wire through the slot in the top, lay the pickup down like that. Then you've got an aluminum cover stamp that fits right over top of that. You just line it up flush against the end of the neck with these two screws on either side that retain the whole entire assembly. Then we're going to pre-drill these two holes and go ahead and screw the pickup in. The new slot that we cut, we're going to do the same thing. Feed the wire through. Go ahead and place the cover on it, mark it, drill it, and install it. And there we go. Two pickups. Now it's on to the wiring, and we're about ready to rock and roll here. So to handle the extra pickup, I'm going to put this toggle switch, three-way switch. Going to place it right up here on the upper bout so it won't be in the way for strumming, but still easy to access for selections. And there we go. So we've got the three-way switch installed for the two pickups. And then we've got the control plate cover. This is where the volume, tone, and output jacks are mounted. And it fits in right here on top of this. Okay. If you'll notice, though, there's some brown discoloration around there. And what this is, these are cut out by laser. And the laser obviously burns the wood just a little bit and causes some discoloration. So the best thing for you to do is just take some 220 grit sandpaper like this in a flat block and just lightly sand along the grain lines, flip it around, and do the same thing to the other edge, keeping the block completely flat the whole time you do this. And then when you're through, you have a nice, clean, beautiful piece that you can work with. So let me give it a couple more whacks and then we'll be ready to show you the next little trick I have for you. Alright, we've got our control plate cover here. Now on the underside of this, what we're going to do, this is a roll of 3M aluminum HVAC or duct sealing tape. It's thick aluminum with a very, very strong weather and temperature non-sensitive adhesive to it. Okay, so what I did was I cut myself a strip of this. We're going to go ahead and peel this off. And I said the adhesive on this is permanent, so you need to be very, very careful. All right, now we're going to lay this upside down along one edge like this. Okay, then using a razor knife, we're simply going to trim the shielding tape so that it's nice and even and flush And there you go. Now, why do you do this? Well, this is one way to make sure that all the grounds are common with the pots, the volume control, tone control, and output jack. It's also a really nice way to help prevent or reduce the amount of 60 cycle hum and noise that you see in the system. So this is not a very expensive. That's probably a tenth of a penny. A roll of this is about $5 or $6, and it lasts forever. But we've gone ahead and applied that to the underside, and this is conductive aluminum, of course. So when you screw the pots on and the jack on, there's a common ground between all three of them, and that takes care of that. The last thing you want to do, flip it over to the other side, use your thumb, and kind of press the aluminum in slightly where the holes are. And then once you do that, it's real easy to take a razor blade knife and simply cut around the edges. And trim the holes out so that the potentiometers will fit through there with no problem. And then this is the last jack, which is this hole is slightly larger than the other two because the output jack shaft is slightly larger than the control shaft. There you go. So I've got the three-way switch wired up. The two gray wires are coming from the bridge, or the brown wire, and the neck, or the white wire, on either side. And then this greenish gray colored wire is the output. And I'm just going to feed this back through the body after I install the switch up top here. So we're about ready to rock and roll. So now we've got our two wires from the pickup selector switch wired together, and the ground wire. So now what we're going to do is we're simply going to just unscrew these mounting nuts right here. Now these are adjustable height-wise. So what you really want to do is leave about 1/8 of an inch sticking out of the top, so that the knobs that fit on top of this are going to end up flush with the top of the guitar. You don't want a really big gap extending out from there. Then we're going to put the tone control in, same way. Just remove the bottom screw, or bottom nut, and leave the one underneath right there. Leave about 1/8 of an inch sticking up. Now we'll tighten these down with a wrench to make sure that everything doesn't move. You know, it's not that hard to do. Just take a small pair of pliers, snug them down, don't over tighten them. And then the last one, which is the bigger hole of the three, is where you're going to put your output jack at. This has a washer with it, so you simply slide that through. You put the washer on top of that, and then tighten that up as well. So that's it. We connected the three wires together from the pickup switch, ground and hot. Then we've got this. All you gotta do is just stuff all this wire back into the control box there. And there you go. Just set the two screws in, volume, tone, and output. We're ready to put some strings on it and do a setup.